chickens stop laying. That's when Uncle Ellery comes around with a hatchet. You know, I got no problem with being a vegetarian or a vegan. Don't get me wrong. But I've got canines for a reason. Hey everybody, this is Ellery with Two Birds, One Stone, Backyard Gardening and Living. Today, we're going to make a simple water-retaining soil. Now, why would you want to make something like this? Well, it's something you can condition into your plants, into your blueberry bushes, when you're planting stuff, and it helps retain water. So if you live in a drier climate, it helps so you don't have to water your plants as much. I mean, this stuff is perfect for if you're doing a 5-gallon bucket garden, if you don't have a yard. You know, you don't have to have a backyard. You could have a porch. You could have a veranda. You could have a, you know, whatever you want. You could make a whole garden in 5-gallon buckets, and this stuff would be perfect for helping keeping your soil moist, and keeping your plants happy, and your vegetables productive. All those great things. What I use it for is for my carnivorous plant bog garden, which is another episode. Maybe we can get fancy and put a link to it up in the imaginary corner or down here. I don't know. I don't know how to do these things. But yeah, so I mean, today we're going to make this thing. It's real easy. Three things mixed together. Asterisk, one of those things should be replaced with another thing. We've got perlite, a type of volcanic glass, very porous. It's made by really superheated volcanic glass that has water in it, and then the water escapes, and it's this porous thing. It helps keep the soil from compacting. We got granite sand. Again, it gives it a little bit more volume to the soil so that the roots don't get compacted by the soil. You know, if you're using this for blueberries or for vegetables or for any other gardening, you can use whatever kind of sand you want. You can use clay sand, you know, limestone sand, sandstone sand. I'm using granite sand because with carnivorous plants, they can't have nutrients leach into them. And so granite's a very benign mineral. So you can mix it in. Again, we'll get to the carnivorous plants in another episode. The third ingredient that you're going to want to have is sphagnum peat moss. Asterisk, you don't want sphagnum peat moss. Turns out this stuff is incredibly destructive to the environment. It all comes from Canada, and they don't really harvest it in a sustainable way, and if we keep using it, it's going to disappear. Now, a good substitute for this is long-fibered sphagnum. The only difference is that's just live sphagnum moss that's been dried out for a while, and it has the same water retention properties. The peat moss is old, dead sphagnum that's settled down to the bottom of a swamp, and then they go in with machinery and they dig the hell out of it. I didn't know this for a long time, but New Zealand is doing a lot of good, sustainable sphagnum harvesting, and so you can get long-fibered sphagnum long-fibered sphagnum moss to replace this. The reason why sphagnum moss is so good with water retention is in its natural live form. There's two major cell forms in a sphagnum moss. You have your photosynthesizing cells, which every green plant has in the earth, and then you have these other water retention cells. They're like barrel-shaped cells that are designed to hold water until drought times, and then the live plant will naturally release water to keep the swamps wet. So even in times of drought in the swamp, the sphagnum moss releases water back into the environment. They're actually like they're environmental engineers, these little plants. It's amazing, right? Like you don't even think about it, but yeah, these giant swamps of sphagnum, they're really conditioning their environment. It's an acidic. So when you're using the soil, you want to include it with plants that can tolerate slightly acidic soils, or you would have to condition it to make it more basic. You know, I'm not a horticulturist. I don't know about pH levels for different vegetables, or you know, look it up. Google's amazing. You can find anything on Google.
It's 4.5 to 5.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's great.
For blueberries, right? For blueberries,
so apparently, yeah. So blueberries are 4.5 to 5 is what they're. So I mean, this is a little bit lower on the pH, which makes it an acidic mixture. So if you have a plant that doesn't tolerate acidic, maybe don't use this, or condition it with something to make it more basic. Lime, I guess. Lime. Yeah. Lime makes things more basic. Anyway, I've been rambling a little bit. Don't get sphagnum peat moss. Get long fiber sphagnum. It's much better. So your basic mixture is going to be 50% sphagnum, and then some combination of sand and perlite. You know, what I'm going to do today is approximately 50% sphagnum, like 30% granite sand, 20% perlite. It doesn't really matter. It's just what you want, you know, especially if you're using this as your only media for growing cranberries or carnivorous plants. You just want a continuous connection of the peat moss. You get any gaps in there because there's too much sand or too much perlite, then the water's not going to travel through correctly, and you're going to get dry plants, and that's not good. So we're going to start just by mixing together all of our ingredients. I've got 2 cubic feet of sphagnum. I've got a 50-pound bag of granite sand, and I've got 2 8-quart bags of coarse horticultural grade perlite. Now, I may or may not use all of this, especially once I get the sphagnum in the wheelbarrow. I'm going to just, you know, visually kind of get, you know, an idea of the ratio. Error on the side of more sphagnum. It doesn't really matter, you know, the compactness that I was talking about when your sphagnum compacts. You know, that it takes a year or two if this is the only thing you're using. You know, and it also, if you're using this in your garden, you don't necessarily have to have the sand and the perlite. You could just use sphagnum, but the sand and the perlite, it's definitely going to make it a little bit more, you know, of a good mixture for water retention. Especially the perlite, because of the porous thing I talked about previously. Those pores can hold water in them, and so, you know, it's like a sponge, you know, little sponges all through the soil mixture. But anyways, so when preparing this, nothing fancy. Something I've learned, you know, if you get really dry sphagnum peat or long fibered sphagnum, if it's completely dry, it's kind of got, counterintuitively, it doesn't want to absorb moisture right away. So you have to kind of let it sit in the water. You know, sometimes I'll let it do it overnight. Today, I'll probably just do it for a little while. You know, just keep things moving. That's already a lot. See, this is just 1 cubic foot, and this is just your, you know, it looks just like dirt, but really it's just ground up little mossies. So, just looking at this and the size of the wheelbarrow, we'll just do 1 bag right now, and then we'll do another bag if we need to. I've done this previously, and I did need slightly more than what I have, but. So then, you know, you have your perlite. You know, let's go nuts. Just the whole bag, you know. Like I said, nobody's judging. You can make whatever mixture you want. Kind of, you know, get everything together. Visually, like, does it look like you put 20% perlite in there? Probably not. Probably have to add more. So, you know, you see like that, you know, that's really good, you know, connection of the sphagnum. Perlite's not interfering with that, and it's not mixed all together too much. Oh, it's dusty. You know, the sphagnum stuff, it grows, like, especially if you live in a wet environment. We're up in the Pacific Northwest. It grows like a weed. So if you have like an old decrepit pond on your property, you could probably turn it into a sphagnum pond. It'd be pretty awesome, right? You have your own, like, just freaking get your own wild sphagnum and bring it into your garden. Really, really keep it in your house. And you can add as much, you know, it's better to go more than the water that you need, because when you pull it out, you know, it's going to leave the excess water behind. And you know, ideally you want to do this like the day before you're going to use it. You just let it sit all night, and then it'll be perfectly soaked. We'll probably let it sit for maybe an hour or something like that, and it'll probably be decently, you know, soaked in. But yeah, stay tuned. We'll be back with the wet soil. Yeah, come here and take a look at this. Or stay there. But look, yeah, see, like, I poured a bunch of water in there, and this dry stuff is just sitting on top. That's what I was saying. It takes a little while for it to actually, like, really incorporate into this. But, you know, miracle of video is you don't have to wait, but we do. This stuff is so good at like trapping moisture in the air. So people used to use this for insulation up in the Arctic regions where it also grows up there. I don't know if it was like Inuits or Norwegians or Russians. I don't know. But one of the great things about living up in the Pacific Northwest is the abundance of rain. A lot. But that means you can have rain barrels. So you have an infinite amount, well, not an infinite, but a lot of fresh, clean, basically distilled water. The important thing about distilled water is, you know, when you're growing carnivorous plants, they can't have any nutrients in the soil. Very little bit. I mean, not any. You know, in the wild they have a little bit. But if you want to have a garden of carnivorous plants, you either have to use rainwater, distilled water, or reverse osmosis water. There might be another type of water. I don't know. There's only one type of water. But you don't want it. You don't want the tap water with chlorine. Now, if you live in New York City, which has the cleanest water, I think, in the country, or in this area, you can get away with it depending on the species you're growing. So Venus flytraps require 50 parts per million of total dissolved solids, and a total dissolved solid is just the amount of salts and chemicals that are in the water. You can get these little meters that you stick in the thing. They're like $5 online. You know, and here in the Pacific Northwest, we have really clean water, but it's right at 50 parts per million. So just to be safe, I don't want my Venus flytraps getting root scorched. I use either rainwater or reverse osmosis water that I get from one of those little water stands outside of your pharmacy. You know, if you're growing Sarracenia pitcher plants, or you know, even Darlingtonia, the California pitcher plant, we'll talk about that in a bit, but you can use a little bit more. You know, if you have under 200 parts per million, you'd be fine. They're a little bit more hardy than the Venus flytraps. And then, you know, there's some tropical carnivorous plants that, you know, have more or less, you know, Nepenthes, that you can use straight tap water. I mean, Nepenthes don't care. It drains through. They don't really get salt buildups, and they don't really care about it. But different species of plant. Convergent evolution. Amazing. But right here we have a rain barrel, and we're going to fill up, you know, a little bit of water just to, you know, give to the plants. Gravity feed. You kind of got to, oh, it's already running. You got to go downhill, you know. Kind of murky in there. But it'll be fine, you know? Why fret? It's a beautiful day. Oh, there we go. That's your short stream.
What do you think about somebody that has cardboard all over their yard?
Oh, I think it's great. I mean, you should be putting horse manure on top or below. Actually, below. Right? So
on top. You know, if you put it on top, it'll take longer, especially fresh horse manure. That way, it'll break down before you. It won't burn the plants.
Yeah.
With cardboard.
Oh, like the chicken poop over there. That burns your plants real quick. What's up, chickens? I'm gonna cut their heads off one day. Oh, when the chickens stop laying, it's when Uncle Ellery comes around with a hatchet. You know, I got no problem with being a vegetarian or a vegan. Don't get me wrong. But I've got canines for a reason.
Hey, Ellery, how did you start getting into carnivorous plants?
Well, when I was just a young lad, living in the hills of Kentucky, running around barefoot, playing the banjo, looking at the attractive cousins. No, I played Mario back, you know, like 1993. You know, had a Nintendo, and I was playing Mario, and they had the little piranha plants come up out of the pipes, and I was like, well, that's cool. And then I saw a Venus flytrap, and I was like, those things are real? Oh, amazing! And so I bought a bunch of them growing up. Like I got them for Christmas. And then back then we didn't have the internet. I mean, we did, but it wasn't the internet that we know today. It was like Alta Vista and like dial-up internet. You know, you sit on Napster for 3 weeks trying to get Chronic 2001 illegally. Not that I ever did that, ever. I respect music and musicians. Pay them. Anyways, I fell in love with the Venus flytrap, you know, and I bought a bunch of them and I killed them. Every time. And that's what this video is all about, is how you can not kill your Venus flytrap like I did a dozen times. You know, it's funny, like all these kids, you know, they get Venus flytraps for Christmas, their birthdays, you know, and then they let them dry out, or they water them with tap water from freaking South Dakota. You know, 5,000 parts per million, 500 parts per million. Actually, I think the water, legally the water has to be below like 400. I don't know, for safe drinking water, which is kind of crazy to me. I've been in places where you could actually like taste the chlorine in the water. But yeah,
I think you can hear a little bit.
Tangent. So I love carnivorous plants, and eventually, when the internet changed from being an infant to what it is now, like a preteen, angsty person, you get more information, right? And so I started learning what I was doing wrong with my carnivorous plants, and you know, eventually I moved to the Pacific Northwest for work. And it's the perfect environment for growing carnivorous plants. North American ones, specifically. It doesn't get too cold, it stays pretty wet up here, it doesn't get too hot. Certain species don't like hot temperatures. And we'll talk about, you know, like, there's resources everywhere to show, like, wherever you live, there's a carnivorous plant that can work for you. If you live in, like, North Dakota and you're like, I can't have outdoor carnivorous plants, it gets too cold here. Of course you can.
What are you doing now, Ellery?
Oh, I'm still just mixing the soil. Waiting for it to absorb. You put like 7 gallons of this. You really want to be patient with it, and you know, don't use it right away. It does take a little while for this stuff to really soak up all the water. All dry now. It's nice and wet, but you can still see little dry pieces in there. We're gonna let it sit for a little while before we start using it, but yeah, it's kind of what you want to see. Like, you see little sand nuggets, the perlite in there. Maybe my ratios are a little off, but you know, like I said, it doesn't really matter, especially if you're not using it for if you're just using it for garden plants. You know? Use whatever, experiment a little. Do what fits you. It's your environment, you know. Are you in a dry spot? Are you in a wet spot? It'll make all the difference. USDA grow zones, you know. Learn it. What's your USDA grow zone? Farming. What are we at?
8B.
8B, yeah, 8B. 8B's great. 9 is what you really want, though. If you're in a USDA zone 9, whoo, I am jealous. It is a perfect.
Maybe we could just wait a few years.
Yeah, maybe. Probably will be this year. It's been a pretty mild winter, you know. A little bit of snow, but we usually don't get snow up here until January, February. It's just the beginning of January, 2021. I'm sure people can look back on this video in 10 years and be like, I know where I was. January, what is it, 6th? Something like that?
7th.
7th? Yeah, oh yeah, January 6th. Some interesting things happened, but I'm sure you can look it up, you know, it'll be in the history books. Maybe you should keep the politics out.
We can edit that out.
Oh yeah, this is the good stuff. It's like Jello. Oh yeah. Well, cool. I think So yeah, you know, as far as the soil goes, this is what you want. You can just till it in with your garden soil when you're planting blueberries, especially. Blueberries love this stuff. You know, before you plant it, mix it in with a little soil. You know, go nuts. It's really great if you have sandy soil. You know, that's really well draining. It doesn't keep your soil moisture very high, so you can use this. Yeah. So happy growing. You know, keep it dirty. Keep it great. That's all I got. So that's the soil episode.
Hey folks, thanks a lot for watching. That's Two Birds, One Stone, Backyard Gardening and Living. Thanks a lot, Ellery, for the great content. And make sure to follow us and give us a like. And we'll have Ellery, the Carnivorous Plant Man, back again soon. Thanks for watching.